So, we will continue with the second session for today. I hope you enjoyed your coffee and tea break. I hope you have visited our exhibitors. So we start with session 2 today, and we want to welcome also Waheed, Mohamed from Titan Aviation. He will give us a wider overview about risks and threats and benefits of the standards. So let's welcome Waheed.
Good morning. Thank you. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the Civil Aviation Authority, South African Police Service, CEOs, general managers, a lot of familiar faces, colleagues, ex-colleagues, the famous old saying, all protocols observed. Thank you. Thank you and welcome. Just a short background on myself. Quickly getting into it, I started off my career at South African Airways at the age of 18. Somebody teased me just now. He looked at me, my ex-colleague, and he said to me, "What tie are you wearing?" And I said, "Well, I'm wearing my blue tie." And he said, "But this is a SAA tie, so don't laugh." This tie was issued to me in 2001 when I worked for South African Airways, started off my career there. Quickly jumped into the aviation security department. As time escalated, I joined the South African Civil Aviation Authority and became an inspector under the FSEC department. So you'll see when I speak about FSEC, aviation security, and I primarily focus on airports, airlines, and all the nice things around Part 108 and air cargo security. So I've spent 11 years as a senior CAA inspector. I also once became, in my short life, the airport manager at Vonneboom Airport. I left because of political reasons known to myself and other political parties. I speak with diplomacy and some sort of factfulness. My CEO said to me the day he employed me, he said, "Can you sell ice creams in winter?" And unfortunately, that's what I have to do here. So, welcome. Thank you for the opportunity. My presentation touches on risks, threats, and benefits of standards within the space that we're in. In the early days when I looked at TAPA as a CA inspector, I said, but why? What are these people going to do for us, and what are the benefits of getting into this process? So we'll touch a bit into that, and we'll see how it goes. So risk is a big thing, ladies and gentlemen. We spoke about risk, we spoke about threat, we spoke about vulnerability. Everybody within this aviation space is literally throwing the dice every single day. We're putting ourselves through risk, and we need to identify the threats and the vulnerabilities. Investment, a very big issue, concern around the topic at hand. Specifically in the air freight operations, investments can be capital intensive, and the risk is therefore to plan for further development without having a clear picture about the current situation and the possibilities of what further investment can bring. As a result of this, it is important to know that prior to making larger investments within your space, that you have the necessary capability to further succeed in the market for a specific goal, to show your partners and clients the importance of your facility, covering all areas of risk, threat, and vulnerability. Nice words. Spoke about investments. We see it every single day, people spending money on the wrong items. We've seen companies investing in armored vehicles. I have armored vehicles, but can you use them? You've got security guards, you've got all sorts of fancy equipment attached to it, but it does not work. So investments are key if you really want to look at what are you actually investing in. Cargo theft within the space is a huge topic. The recent economic crisis, electricity crisis in South Africa, I can't stand here and tell you what the challenges are. We all know the challenges. You heard yourself before this. The bar has been set. all I said after I heard the previous presentation is, I just said one line, and the truth will set you free. That's basically what has been told. The truth will set you free, and unfortunately we're in a state where the truth has to be told, but we as the leaders of this industry, the youth as well as the seniors, have to pave the way forward to understand how are we going to mitigate these risks in order for us to move forward. So cargo theft, it's a broad topic. Theft is taking place at any given time. You'll see further down part of my presentation, I've got a person coming in to specifically talk of a previous incident, to identify and tell you about the risks that he's identified and how it was mitigated. So we had an incident not too long ago, and we received information and everything was all perfect and fine, and we accosted 12 perpetrators at the foreign cargo terminal at OR Tambo International Airport. And the main guy that obviously assisted with this entire process, none other than Colonel Roberts, he's here in the room today. He's also been involved in that. If you watch that video that has been trending on social media a couple of years ago, was Louis Prinsloo, and it made it up to the Nando's advert and so forth, where that Land Cruiser was shot at, and he says in the video, call Robbie. Here's Robbie, ladies and gentlemen. Let's give him a round of applause. So my colleague is here. You know, we've learned from these lessons around these kind of incidents. But what I can tell you happened in December, the point I'm trying to make is the perpetrators that tried to penetrate the system at foreign cargo had paperwork 100%. Looking at all the familiar faces in this room, you'll understand what a CSD, a Consignment Security Declaration is. You'll understand what a transfer manifest is. You know exactly what a master air waiver looks like. They had a paperwork to the T. So the system actually failed us because the system allowed the person to get into the space, and eventually they could have taken that cargo. Now fast forward 3 years, they actually got it right. We learned from a previous lesson, and that is how we manage to make sure that we've mitigated our risk. So just a simple example. It was mentioned earlier that you need to think like a criminal. We obviously trying not to think like criminals the entire day, but the modus of operandi that's used is so intense, it is so secure, if you want to call it, that you actually have to zoom in to understand what is plan B. So planning and air freight costs play a major role as well. Air freight costs have increased. Looking at the South African Civil Aviation Authority, they've got a regulated agent list of, Andrew, if you'll correct me, 138, somewhere there? Okay, I'm close. So a regulated agent obviously is an agent that prescribes to Part 108 of the civil aviation process. You submit a security manual of procedures, you go through rigorous inspections, you get audited, you get ad hocs, you name it, you get listed as a regulated agent. Off you go. You have the authority to tender air cargo for carriage by air. Boom. 48 hours later, you get robbed. Your system has been penetrated. You lose your license. What happens to your business? Things start to collapse. So planning is important, and besides air freight costs, the costs of actually setting up your operation also plays a major role on where you're going into. Organizational risks, huge. For me, the final classification is that for analysis purposes, you need to look at internal and external organizational risks. An internal organization, at an internal level, the empirical data indicates that primary employees who are responsible for identifying risk are mainly your safety and your security manager that you have. This is the person that you're relying on every single day to identify where your shortfalls are. This is the person that is going to make sure that your access and egress control is 100% so that nobody commits an act of unlawful interference at your premises. All fancy words, nice. But this is the person that needs to make sure that people have jobs. Customers, 100%, the customer is always right. We had an incident day before yesterday where a person pitches up with a reflector. I'm from customs and I'm here for an inspection. So the guard opens the gate, in he goes. He's not there for an inspection. He brought his CV because he was laid off from customs and he's now looking for a job. So much for my access control. Hooray, the guy's been through 3 years of CAA refresher training. He's got a dangerous goods Cat 6 regulation. He's got awareness training. He attended airport induction with AXA. And you know what? The man is in the system, but he allowed a customs official without checking the permit onto my premises. Now that could be a terrorist. That could be Al-Qaeda. That could be one of my ex-colleagues that did not like the way I got rid of him to come and sort me out. But at the end of the day, the basic fundamentals were not met. Coming back to part 108, 109, 110, I'm not here to bore you with the regulations. I'm not here to punt for the CAA. I'm not here to talk about specific terms within the Civil Aviation Authority. But the regulatory framework in this country in the past five years has gone to a good level of making sure that the secure supply chain process is intact. Part 108 covers air cargo security, Part 109 covers training and certification, and Part 92 covers dangerous goods that you want to obviously travel by air. So I'm an airport person. I talk aviation, I talk aircraft. We start coming to trucks. Road freight is a total different ball game. You put in that same dangerous goods in a truck. That same truck that is entering the airport could have weapons of mass destruction going onto an aircraft. I remember a short point from one of my previous colleagues' presentation, and he'll be chatting a bit later. He'll probably re-mention it again, but let me steal his line. He says the biggest thing for him is he does not want to get onto an aircraft and feel his feet getting warm. Because if your feet are getting warm in an aircraft and things are starting to heat up, it means that at the bottom of that belly, things are not going good. So if you, besides security, besides safety and all of those things, if you send the wrong dangerous goods onto an airplane, you're taking down 300 odd people's lives within a very short space of time because the staff member at hand did not do his work. I remember a colleague of mine starting not too long ago, and he came to me and he said, "Sir, you know what, aviation is not my game, but what is this dangerous goods you speak of? Is it knives? Is it weapons?" I've traveled locally and they spoke about legs and gels, and what is dangerous? Is it because I can't? Well, if you're in aviation space, you'll understand that you need to work out a Q value at this altitude to make sure that, listen, the aircraft doesn't go down. So dangerous goods forms a major part of aviation and risks within the air cargo space. And people, in a lot of occasions, take that for granted. Security, looking at that picture, I got it off the internet. I looked at it and I was like, wow, okay. There's the X-ray machine. There's a guy being searched. I see a handheld metal detector. I don't see an archway metal detector. I see the famous covert stand. So you can analyze this picture and you can come up with all your different versions of events. The point is, security is never 100%. This guy could be coming through. If you look on the left, the acceptance staff point is right there, or the documents or whatever. It's just, there's too much to concentrate on in security. There's too many areas of concern, risk, threat, and vulnerability, and that is why your level of concentration is important when it comes to identifying these risks. And we're going to talk about the benefit of TAPA. Why are you telling me all of this? This guy came up and spoke about the risks and threats within his space. Okay, well, what is TAPA going to do for me? We've seen with experience that, look, the unit standards and the basics that have been put in place, it aids, it assists you, it ticks the relevant boxes. When the Civil Aviation Authority walks in and you've got your TAPA certification, you're good to go. because you've over-exceeded what you're supposed to have delivered already. And I think that is a big difference when it comes to having the correct standards in place within your organization. I've traveled the world with the CAA. We've done inspections at all different airports, and you walk into some airports and what you see on the news channel is not always what you see in reality. You will get screeners, you will get security staff members, and you will get police from different states that are also weak. I've seen it around the world. South Africa is not so bad. So to put you in a picture, we've got recognition from the Transport Security Administration, the United States government, the TSA, under the Civil Aviation Part 108 regulations. We have been recognized by the UK Department for Transport. We have passed the ICAO International Civil Aviation Organization inspection that has happened. We have all of these international recognitions. So the picture I'm trying to paint to you is that we are moving in the right direction. The challenges that we're facing on the ground is something that we can fight. Risk management, you know, we can put up nice charts, we can look at all of these fancy things, and I can give you my thesis. And we all have our own conundrums and equations on how we want to work out risk management. But at the end of the day, the biggest thing is the tool that you use has to work for you. We've seen in a lot of instances, freight forwarders, companies, security companies, big portfolios, risk management, security management, etc. But people are working in the office, they're not on the ground, they're giving instructions, and those kind of things just don't work. Theft. Once again, I'm going to touch on theft again. We've got a serious problem when it comes to theft because cargo theft, especially within the aviation space, has gone to a separate level. Total different ballgame. It's no more about, you know, let's stop and hijack a truck and try and do. Guys are going for the kill. So you'll see the speaker after me, my colleague slash partner in business, he's going to speak of a real life incident. We've had a shipment, cell phones, 40 million. These guys want these phones. Without divulging too much information, I mean, the buyer is already waiting with 2 million rand cash to buy that same shipment worth 40 million. And that is the inside information that we have. We're sitting with crime intelligence, national intelligence, secret service, police, informers, all of these people, we have that information. We know the modus of operandi. But what we're saying, they have their own secure supply chain process. And that is the difference at hand. They have outnumbered us. They have manipulated the system. They have zoomed into all of the functions at hand, and they've looked at our standards and they've created their own. So when it comes to cargo theft, it's a big issue at hand. The CA walks in for an inspection, and if you've had an incident without a corrective action plan, you're probably going to lose your license. So I don't want to stress more on cargo theft. The clients, I mean, are critical for us as well. This is one of my own pictures. Those are PMCs coming straight off an aircraft. So in a nutshell, if an aircraft lands, you can either pull off PMCs, which is this full consolidation of cargo, or you can go and fetch your mixed cargo, which goes ultimately to the airlines. So in this case, these PMCs will get pulled off from the aircraft. You will record those numbers. You will sign a transfer manifest, which is a customs document, and you will take your cargo off. Now, in the real world, if you were clever, you would have this information as a criminal. You would know exactly these PMCs are coming with this cargo into the warehouse. The customs official might have released the information, and the next thing, the exact time of where this cargo was going out has been released. So it's a simple image like this that can tell you, oh, look, this is a parking bay. This is where the cargo is. We know who has that paperwork. Boom, in we go. So the point I'm trying to make is that, you know, your liability and insurance is also playing a major key in your daily aspects. Once again, dangerous goods, I've spoken about it, but We all travel on passenger aircrafts every day. You need to make sure what's downstairs in the belly. Like I said, I love speaking primarily aviation. But that's a big topic at hand. It's something that's really, really coming up. Risk management, identify your processes, identify your controls, and make sure that your monitors at hand are there. The types of risks or losses can affect your assets. You'll have to look at probability of your occurrence and quantify or prioritize your loss. Cyber threats have gone to another level beyond your imagination. I'm not talking about what I've heard or what I've been told or what I've read. I'm telling you about what I know. So my very own client calls me and says, listen, I can't send cargo today because I've been called by some foreigners who want $5 million in their account within 48 hours. And it's now gone down to 2 hours because they've got my entire system frozen. I can't even cut a master air waybill, and my business has come to a complete standstill. That is the reality of what cyber threats have come to. That is the reality of where the world is heading. I was talking to Thorsten this morning, and he's like, yeah, well, in the future you're going to get a guy calling and say, look, this is a system where we've hijacked the truck and the truck has been switched off through the tracker and all sorts of things. But cyber attacks are there. Job security, unhappy people are going to do what they need to do internally. And this ties into your insider threat, which is the biggest concern for us within the aviation space. Once again, the benefits of the standards, there you have it. You know, you can achieve your level of security, you can become part of a global trend. All of these nice things are there, 100%. Make no mistake, it will work on black and white. But in the state that we're in, the country that we're in, with the challenges that we have, you need to be careful, cautious, and considerate when it comes to identifying risk, threats, and vulnerabilities. There's benefits of the certification, there's huge benefits. And for me, the biggest thing is TAPA has identified that, you know, their existence, their standards, and the process flow has really made a difference. When people see that certification and they see that stamp or they see that badge and they hear that, they understand that, look, seriousness has kicked in. And in my years of experience coming from the Civil Aviation Authority, managing a small airport, currently now working as a GM in a high-value cargo facility, also concentrating on general cargo, you deal with people within the space on an hourly basis. There are challenges at every minute and new challenges. So out of this forum as well, we're also going to recreate our own LASK, which is a airport security committee, as well as covering road freight. We are roping in people like customs, the police, crime intelligence, so we can sit at these forums and identify the right risks to see how to move forward. So without boring you, I'm going to allow some questions. Before we continue on to our next speaker, which will be Martin Taylor, but I'll introduce him in a short while. Thank you. Any questions, comments? Please. My colleagues are staring at me. I can see them, but it's fine. Yes, sir.
Distribution list, or can you just expound a bit more on that initiative, please? Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, so what we've done, at an airport level, we're obviously sitting with all regulated agents, freight forwarders, but at the end of the day, if you're sitting at any airport, you're ultimately responsible and you will be you'll actually be reporting to the airport's authority on that airport, which is EXA. Okay? So in terms of civil aviation regulations, you've got Part 111, or yeah, am I correct? Part 111, which covers your airport security program. In that airport security program, it is identified there that there is a local airport security committee. So what we have done through the Civil Aviation Authority, through the brigadiers and the generals, we've sat down and we said, look, let's form a formal committee where we can sit down once a month or sit down at a certain period, come together and identify these risks with the relevant responsibilities and see what is the way forward. So to put an amateur thing together for something like this is not going to work. There needs to be seriousness. We're going to have, so my current CEO, General Motiba, who's in the house at the moment, will be actually chairing that local airport security committee. But this time around, it's not that there is no local airport security committee at the airport. This time around, we want to do it a little bit different in a sense where we're inviting the outside road freight, air freight, and the key role players, the people that are in security, the security companies, etc., to come forward and say, look, become a member of this unit, and let's see how are we going to identify the way forward. It's, you know, in every community, you've got a neighborhood watch. You know, the guys come together and identify the problems and the concerns and the weaknesses and stuff. Police are there, no problem. But the police will respond when there's an incident. They're not going to come and sit down with you and tell you about preventative measures. That is not their job. In our case, we're looking for preventative measures. A simple situation is the current state of affairs at OR Tambo entering foreign cargo. You need to send an email with your documents before you enter, okay? The repercussions of that is the traffic is backed up onto the R21, right? Everybody knows that. Those kind of things need to be discussed at a local airport security committee. How are we going to assist the client at the same time tick all the boxes in security? Is an email actually the right thing to do? We've got an IVS permit, you've got an XR permit, you've got all of these fancy things, but we're concentrating on an email. Who identified this email? Who made sure that this is the law that we're going to follow? Those kind of things need to be looked at. In the event of a heightened threat, in terms of aviation, what is a heightened threat? Do we understand who needs to be called? If there's a suspicious parcel and we think it's a bomb, are we going to call the police or are we going to call a private security company that's accredited by the Civil Aviation Authority? Those kind of things need to be discussed at that local airport security committee. And we're pushing to get it done as soon as possible. Obviously, the security companies will feed into it and identify their loopholes. For example, we've monitored and done surveillance. We found that, look, there are certain blind spots within these areas. But in the event of an incident, who responds here? Police are there 100%, and we respect them. But let's give them the assistance that they deserve as well. It's not so easy. Being on an airport, you become complacent when you're there for too long. I've seen it, I know. A security guard, and you will sit there for 8 hours of the day. A screener can only screen for 20 minutes, but after that 25th minute, doing that for 3 years, he's going to become fed up. So change is good sometimes, but you need to begin with the end in mind. And I just confused you there, but anyways, next question. Any other comments, questions? Massimo? Hello, hello.
Waheed, you mentioned about copying of paperwork.
Sorry?
You mentioned about copying of paperwork, how diligent
Yes.
the criminals are and how accurate they are. Is this, does this involve more insiders or does it involve more on cybercrime or both?
It's a combination of both. I mean, for argument's sake, if you are a regulated agent, a freight forwarder or a courier company at an airport, you would clearly know that your master airwables, your documentation, your CSDs is your security sensitive information, which obviously needs to be kept private and confidential. You'd obviously want to not put everything online, but obviously hacking the system will also give you that information. But what we found, it's a combination of both. The disgruntled employee, and that is why I'm talking about your employees being satisfied at work. The disgruntled employee will probably sell that information for $5,000. And that's what we've seen. We've seen guys sell information, Colonel Roberts will confirm, $2,000. Boom, Bob's your uncle. I gave this guy a copy of the Master Air waiver, done. He knows there's a pallet of shipment worth 28 bars coming in at 10 o'clock in the morning. That's it, he's got his $2,000. Off he goes, he's happy, he's sorted. He did nothing wrong, he just sold a piece of paper for $2,000. So the insider threat for me is critical. And that boils down to your security manager making sure that he's identified his risks and threats. Who have you employed? Have these people got background checks? What is a background check? Does it involve a criminal and a previous experience check? What does it entail? Have you checked, or did you just bring somebody on board that had a necessary qualification and put him in that space? Do you have measures in place to identify these loopholes? Is your area covered with CCTV cameras? CAA says 90 days, I got 30 days. Those kind of small checks need to be in place for you to be able to mitigate your risk within the secure supply chain process. But broad question, thank you. So, I don't see any other hands.
Yeah.
I would like to, Marcus? I would like to introduce our next speaker, Mr. Martin Taylor. So, Mr. Martin Taylor is currently the risk manager at Renus Logistics. I've known Martin for a few years. Martin is actively involved within the airport operations as well. He was also previously involved in the incident where an attempted robbery happened. So the idea of Martin coming to speak today is to give you first-hand information on what happened during that incident, the risks involved, and how his entity actually mitigated all of those risks. The purpose of this is obviously to demonstrate to you factfulness, truthfulness, and to show you a clear picture of the challenges that are being faced within this space. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. A round of applause for Martin Taylor.